Happy Friday and welcome to episode 3 of I'm Bored, so why the hell not? And by reaching episode 3, we've already lasted longer than Neil and Marty on 610 Sports. Of course, the biggest topic of the day today is the NFL draft and the Chiefs' bold move up to number 10 to get Pat Mahomes out of Texas Tech as their future quarterback. It is the first time that the Chiefs have drafted a quarterback in the first round since 1983, and as you see by our Twitter poll, it's an overwhelmingly positive reaction from the fans. Sure, a handful of them do wish they would have taken Deshaun Watson with that pick, but for the most part, everybody is on board with Pat Mahomes. How will he do? I can't say that I can tell you. I'm no scout, and we know first-round quarterbacks are very hard to predict in the NFL. But one thing we do know is it does signify the end soon of the Alex Smith era in Kansas City. What does it mean for this year's team, though, coming up? Because this is a team that a lot feel are Super Bowl ready, with Alex Smith as their quarterback, and now Pat Mahomes holding a clipboard. How does Alex Smith react to being a lame duck? Because as an organization, you've basically just told him, you're not going to be with us past this next year. We've seen how that's affected some of the Royals on the field with their contract years coming up and knowing they're probably not going to be back on the team. I think it'll be very interesting to see how Alex Smith deals with this, knowing that this is likely his last go-around with the Kansas City Chiefs. More importantly, on what I think about the pick, let's take a look at what the media thought about last night's draft. We begin with Carrington Harrison from The Drive, who was convinced the Chiefs would not move up to top 10 after seeing what the Bears had to give up to move all the way up to number 2 to take Mitch Trubisky. Well, that one didn't work out because the Chiefs did end up going into the top 10. They had to trade a first-rounder next year along with their first-rounder this year to move up, plus a couple of other picks later in this weekend's draft. So, think about this. They traded 2 second rounds to get Alex Smith, and basically they used 2 first rounds now to get Pat Mahomes. So that puts a lot of pressure on the new quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. Later on in the draft, as it became obvious that the Chiefs had drafted up to number 10, some of the media members started making their predictions on what the Chiefs would do with that pick. Kevin Keesman from Between the Lines said, "I'm guessing LB." But don't worry, in typical Keesman fashion, within seconds, he covered his bases and hitched his wagon to Deshaun Watson. Of course, the Chiefs did end up taking a quarterback, but it wasn't Deshaun Watson. Of course, Keesman wasn't the only one that wanted the national champion coming to Kansas City. Bob Fescoe jumped right in line, only to change tune a few minutes later when the pick was Pat Mahomes. Fescoe here says, "Love it," when he's talking about the pick. "I thought you wanted Deshaun Watson just moments ago." Fescoe's a little bit like the weather in Missouri. Don't like it today? Just wait till tomorrow and it'll be completely different. Speaking of Bob, this morning he sends out this tweet. "I'm a fan. I'm not objective. It's not my job to be objective. It's my job to give my feelings and opinions." Yes, that is part of your job to give feelings and opinions, but at the same time, you do need to be objective. Otherwise, we get the flippy-floppy like we got last night, where it was Deshaun Watson, and then it was love the pick. Bob's really good at grabbing the banner, jumping to the front of the line, and leading the parade. And he talks here about being a fan. Anybody who knows Bob and listens to Bob on a regular basis knows he's a New York guy and knows he's really a fan of the Giants and of the Yankees. Yet, listen to him every morning on 610 Sports, and he will try to convince you he's a fan of the Royals and a fan of the Chiefs. As long as they're doing well. Because you'll remember this is the guy a couple of years ago after the Chiefs started 1-5 who said he wasn't going to talk about the Chiefs anymore, only then to have to talk about them when they became very good, right, rattling off 11 wins in the regular season. The other problem Bob has is a short memory. For example, last night he sent out this tweet. "You a Cowboys fan or something?" Mocking Skip Bayless. So he mocked Skip Bayless for being a Cowboys fan, but then this morning talked about how he's a fan and he's paid to give his opinions. Isn't that the same thing Skip Bayless is paid to do? Yet Bob criticized him last night and then did the exact same thing this morning. Typical Bob. Back now to the draft and the reaction to the draft with some actual analysis. Here we go with Soren Petro, who tweeted last night, "Let's see him get it done first, but have to be going nuts right now if you're a Chiefs fan. Number 1 arm talent goes to quarterback guru in Andy Reid." That may be the thing that has to have you most excited about this pick is the way Andy Reid talked about Pat Mahomes last night, admitting he was a gunslinger, admitting he was a little bit raw and needed a little bit of work, but saying that he reminded him of a guy he had in Green Bay before he was a head coach, that guy, of course, being Brett Favre. More analysis now. We go to Nate Bukaty, who had a string last night of tweets agreeing, "If Andy Reid does, then I do too. I love what I saw from Watson versus Bama, but accuracy is huge at NFL level, and that concerned me with Watson." He followed up, "Of course this might not work, as we all know about any draft pick, but I love the guts Dorsey and Reid showed here, something we haven't seen in this town in generations." Agreed. That's why this was the perfect time to make the move, responding to Andy Reid saying Mahomes isn't ready to play right now, but should be able to learn from Alex Smith and has tremendous upside. That's why it's the perfect time to make this move. This is Smith's team for 17. Great situation for Mahomes to grow. I agree it is a great situation for Mahomes to grow, but I will reiterate my concerns on how Alex Smith treats this next year, because he's got to be thinking right now, where am I going to live in 2 years? Which team am I going to be play for? What am I going to do with my family? There's a lot going on inside the head of Alex Smith right now, and he's got to be not very happy with the fact that he's basically been told your time here with the Chiefs isn't very long, which led to this, one of the top tweets from last night. Faux John Madden. Perfect. A tweet that'll make all Chiefs fans stand and applaud. Some other highlights from last night's draft coverage. How about this one? Charles Harris, local kid from Missouri and right here in the Kansas City area, gets Sasquatch to join him for his draft watch party, and a little extra cheddar, I'm sure. Props for his ability to maximize his few minutes on TV last night during the draft. And finally, one of the things that I don't like so much about the draft is mock drafts. When I did work in sports radio, way back when, I didn't like the draft and leading up to the draft because we talked so much about mock drafts. And you never know when a GM's going to make a huge jump like this to number 10. So you try to draft and you try to figure out what the Chiefs will be able to do with the player that's available. When you're putting together mock drafts, you have no ability to know who's going to trade for what, where the team's going to end up picking, which makes it very difficult. The other thing I don't like about it is it's become like predicting the NCAA tournament field. People put out so many mock drafts. I mean, how many does Kuiper have? 50 mock drafts by the end? Todd McShay as well. Here is an example. Therese Paylor of the Kansas City Star put out 4 different mock drafts. Well, kudos to him for doing the work, but I don't like when somebody looks back at their first draft and say, yeah, I had the Chiefs taking him in my first mock draft. Well, what about your 4th mock draft? In his latest mock draft, he had the Chiefs taking cornerback, not figuring they'd have Mahomes to select. Of course, he didn't know that they would go up to number 10, but don't spend too much time patting yourself on the back for having him as your pick in one of your 4 mock drafts. And that'll do it for episode 3 of I'm Bored, Why the Hell Not? Brought to you today by The Landing Eatery and Pub in Liberty. Well, actually not. I'm not getting paid anything to do this, but I'm hoping by mentioning their name, maybe I'll get a free drink or two at happy hour this afternoon. That'll do it for today. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you soon.